What if I told you that your perception of global warfare isn't actually being shaped by, four-star generals or leaked intelligence?
Right, yeah. It's actually being shaped by media strategists.
Exactly. Strategists who are using the exact same psychological click triggers as like a viral YouTuber.
Which sounds completely wild, I know. But today, we actually have our hands on an internal playbook that proves it.
Yeah, we really do. And welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are looking at a highly specific internal creative directive. It's the brand architecture document from Ambat Media Group.
Yeah, specifically for their flagship strategic affairs platform, Strategic Vanguard. And what's crucial to understand for you listening is that we aren't dissecting a specific war today.
Right.
Or, a new stealth bomber. Yeah. We are looking directly at the meta layer here.
Yeah, the mission for this deep dive is to essentially tear down the scaffolding. We want to look at how a professional media outlet takes incredibly dense geopolitical and military intelligence and, packages it to capture public attention.
Right, because looking through this stack of internal directives, it's unsettling in a way, right?
Oh, totally. It's like we're looking directly at the blueprints of how a professional media outlet literally manufactures authority.
It really is a masterclass in the psychology of information consumption. The reality they face is that most people are not defense analysts.
No, definitely not.
Most people just don't care about the radar cross-section of a new frigate.
Right, but the decisions governments make about military doctrine, geography, power projection, those dictate global trade, inflation, and ultimately, survival.
Exactly. And this document basically outlines how to force a distracted public to care about all of that.
So to understand how Strategic Vanguard actually forces that attention, we have to start with the foundational philosophy of what they call the hidden system.
The hidden system.
And the absolute golden rule, which is practically written in bold letters across this brief, is that the content is fundamentally not about the machines.
Which creates an immediate paradox, right? Because for a platform whose entire visual identity is saturated with fighter jets and warships, it feels contradictory.
Right, yeah.
But the core directive strictly states, quote, do not merely describe military systems. The focus has to be entirely on the hidden logic behind the power.
So if a writer submits a script that just, lists the specifications of a new tank, it just gets rejected.
Outright rejected, yeah.
It's like reviewing a new smartphone, but instead of talking about the camera's megapixels, you explain how that camera is fundamentally altering human memory and social structures.
That's a great way to put it. And what's fascinating here is that this approach bridges the massive gap between, hardcore defense wonks and the everyday curious listener.
Right, because by explaining why nations build certain capabilities, it changes everything.
Exactly. It's the interaction between geography, economics, and technology. They turn dry specs into high-stakes global chess.
So every single piece of content has to answer one core question, right? What does this mean for the balance of power?
Yeah, balance of power is everything. So instead of focusing on the hardware, they instruct creators to focus on things like doctrine and power projection.
Which we should probably break down because those terms get thrown around a lot in defense circles, but people don't always explain them.
Right, let's definitely break them down. So doctrine isn't just a military buzzword. It's the fundamental operating system of a nation's military.
The operating system, I like that.
Yeah, it's the set of deeply ingrained rules that dictate how a country fights, mostly based on its unique geography and economy. A landlocked country has a completely different doctrine than an island nation.
That makes total sense. And power projection.
Right. Power projection is simply the mechanical ability to sustain force far away from your own borders. It's not just having a big ship.
Right. It's the logistics.
Exactly. It's the massive, highly unsexy logistical chain of refueling stations, satellite uplinks, and, political alliances required to keep that ship operational on the other side of the planet.
So by demanding that creators focus on the doctrine and the logistics, they take a dry hardware review and give the viewer this huge realization. Suddenly you realize that every piece of steel floating in the ocean isn't just a weapon.
No, it's there for a highly calculated geographic reason. They're revealing the hidden architecture that dictates how the world actually functions.
Okay, let's unpack this, though, because there is a massive roadblock here.
Right.
You can have the most profound sociological insights about naval strategy and global supply chains in the world, but if the packaging looks like a university syllabus, It's just dead on arrival.
Completely dead, yeah. The internet is basically a graveyard of high-minded philosophy that nobody clicks on.
Exactly. So how are they tricking the algorithm into caring about defense wonkery?
Well, that friction point is exactly what necessitates their strict, psychology-driven packaging rules. The document outlines a really rigid framework for the art of the title.
The art of the title.
Yeah. It explicitly says content must be story first, consequence driven, and curiosity focused.
Right. And we actually have the before and after examples from the document to prove how they enforce this in the editorial process.
These are fascinating, yeah.
So a raw draft title submitted by a researcher might be China's aircraft carrier program.
Which is accurate, sure, but it's completely academic.
Right. So Strategic Vanguard's editorial team changes it to the strategy behind China's carrier fleet.
Notice the subtle cognitive shift there. They introduce the word strategy. It implies intention. It tells the viewer, hey, there's a secret plan at play here, and you are currently unaware of it.
Right. It creates an itch you have to scratch. Another draft title is Indian Navy Modernization.
Boring.
Totally boring.
Yeah.
So they transform that into, can India's Navy control the Indian Ocean?
Yeah, suddenly it's a question with massive geopolitical weight.
But my absolute favorite is how they handle logistics. The original draft is literally just military logistics.
Right, a topic that dictates the outcome of every war in history, yet guarantees almost zero clicks online.
Because it sounds like a supply chain seminar. So the editorial team changes it to the invisible force behind every military victory.
Wow.
Yeah. And air defense systems explained becomes the shield that decides modern wars. I mean, they aren't even mentioning the actual equipment anymore.
Exactly. They are stripping away the subject and replacing it entirely with the consequence. In cognitive science, this relies heavily on the concept of the curiosity gap.
The curiosity gap.
Right. The human brain naturally hates an open loop. When you introduce a concept like an invisible force deciding wars, the brain perceives a gap in its own knowledge and just feels this compulsory need to close it.
I mean, I have to push back on this document, though.
Sure.
The brief specifically demands that the content be curiosity-focused, and it explicitly tells creators to study the audience psychology of highly successful, Terminal Intelligence Bureau-style YouTube channels.
Right, yeah.
But in the exact same paragraph, it aggressively demands that the platform remain analytical rather than sensational. And it has to be authoritative. Isn't that a huge contradiction? Like, the line between the shield that decides modern wars and just cheap clickbait seems dangerously thin.
It is thin, yeah. It's the central tension of modern digital media. An Ambat Media Group navigates it by focusing purely on the nature of the payoff.
The payoff.
Yeah. Think about it. Clickbait is essentially a broken promise. Clickbait says, you won't believe what this submarine just did, and then the video is 10 minutes of filler leading to a super mundane fact.
Right, it relies on emotional hyperbole. It's a cheap thrill that leaves you feeling annoyed.
Exactly. But Strategic Vanguard avoids that because they mandate an intelligence brief aesthetic. Their goal is to trigger that curiosity gap, but the payoff must be deeply analytical.
So they actually have to deliver the goods.
Yes. They want the audience to experience a very specific aha moment, like, oh, I never realized that geographic bottleneck was the real reason for the conflict. They borrow the mechanical hooks of a viral creator, but substitute the hyperbole with institutional credibility.
Okay, so they're basically dressing up a rigorous intelligence briefing in the neon clothing of a viral video.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Which brings us to the visual side of that clothing. Because once the title hooks your intellect, the thumbnail has to hook your gut.
The visual doctrine in this playbook is, it's perhaps the most heavily engineered aspect of the entire brand.
It's wild. They have a highly specific rule book that essentially color codes global tensions.
Yes.
So if the topic is naval strategy, like aircraft carriers, contested straits, sea lanes, the creators are restricted to a deep blue and gold color palette.
Right. And from an evolutionary and psychological standpoint, deep blue and gold convey depth, historical wealth, maritime tradition, and a certain slow-moving inevitability.
Yeah, but if the video shifts to air power, so stealth fighters, strategic bombers, radar networks, the palette abruptly shifts to gray and red.
Which feels intensely industrial. Gray and red strip away the history and replace it with speed, machinery, and this inherent clinical threat.
Then we get to geopolitics, videos about strategic maps, resource influence, diplomatic corridors. Those must use dark gold.
They are gold, right.
And finally, when they cover conflict and crisis, so active strategic flashpoints or escalation, the palette is mandated to be what they call fire dark.
Fire dark.
Yeah, heavily utilizing black, deep oranges and escalation imagery. Always with the strategic vanguard branding to maintain that premium feel, of course.
But wait, think about the distinction between those last two.
Right.
Why dark gold for geopolitics, but fire dark for a crisis?
Well, looking at it, it's literally painting the world by its tension levels.
Yeah.
It feels like dark gold is the shadow and fire dark is the actual flame.
That's the exact mechanism. Geopolitics is the slow, methodical, often unseen maneuvering of wealth and influence. Dark gold feels historical and slightly obscured, like crucial decisions being made in quiet, wealthy rooms.
Right.
In physics terms, it represents the potential energy of global power. The tension is building, but nothing has snapped yet.
And a crisis is when that potential energy becomes kinetic.
Exactly. When the theoretical maps and supply chains suddenly turn into actual missiles in the air and blockaded ports, that's kinetic energy. That's why you shift to fire dark. It implies immediacy, heat, danger.
Wait, so they're essentially color-coding anxiety.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like, if I see fire dark pop up in my feed, my brain is being primed for an active threat before I even read the title. That borders on psychological conditioning.
It is absolutely a form of psychological priming. Over time, the regular viewer is subconsciously trained by this visual consistency. You see a deep blue and gold thumbnail, your central nervous system prepares for a deliberate, strategic maritime analysis. You see fire dark, your pulse quickens slightly because your brain already knows you're about to explore an active, escalating threat before a single word is even spoken.
But, you can't just have a brilliant cover and a blank book. The click and the color palette only get the viewer into the room. So how does Strategic Vanguard actually deliver on their lofty promise of institutional authority once the content starts?
Yeah, this is where the playbook shifts from marketing to persuasion.
Okay.
The document outlines a rigid framework called the Strategic Vanguard Signature Structure. Every single piece of content, whether it's about great power competition, nuclear deterrence, or the Indo-Pacific strategy, goes through this exact 6-step machine.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? I mean, why should someone who might just be prepping for a business meeting or wanting to be well-informed care about a media company's 6-step content structure?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this structure is actually a masterclass in persuasion and synthesis. It is a highly effective template for communicating literally any complex idea to a distracted audience.
Okay, let's apply this so we can actually see the machinery working. Say they are producing that video we mentioned earlier, the strategy behind China's carrier fleet. How does this 6-step structure manipulate the viewer's brain?
Okay, so it starts with step 1, the strategic hook. Crucially, they don't start by talking about the aircraft carrier.
Because that violates the hidden system rule.
Exactly. Instead, the hook presents a high-stakes anomaly. The video might open with a satellite image of a massive new dry dock and ask, why is Beijing spending billions on a maritime asset they technically don't need for coastal defense?
Right. It immediately creates that open loop. They don't need it, then why build it?
Yep. And once the viewer is hooked, the script moves immediately to step 2, objective strategic context.
Okay, what does that look like?
This is where they build trust. They do not offer an opinion here. They lay out undeniable objective realities, usually geographic or economic facts. They might show a map of the Malacca Strait and explain that 80% of China's energy imports flow through this tiny, easily blockaded bottleneck.
So they're laying the pieces out on the chessboard so the viewer finds themselves nodding along. You are establishing an agreed-upon reality. Like, yes, that is a map. Yes, that is a choke point.
Right. It makes the viewer feel smart and grounded. Once that foundation is set, they move to step 3, deep analytical breakdown.
Okay.
Here, they show their specialized expertise by explaining the mechanics of the hidden system. They detail how an aircraft carrier functions not as a weapon, but as a mobile diplomatic tool to secure that specific energy choke point.
So they explain the why. So far, it's very educational. But the document places a huge emphasis on step 4, right? The transition moment.
Yes. The transition is the pivot point of the entire episode. Once you have established the objective facts and demonstrated deep analytical capability, you have essentially earned the absolute right to pivot from objective reality to subjective analysis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you transition by asking the ultimate question, something like, so what happens when this fleet is finally complete?
Which perfectly opens the door for step 5, the strategic vanguard's signature take.
This is the psychological Trojan horse right here.
The Trojan horse.
Think about it. If you start a video with your signature take, just coming out and saying China's carrier fleet will fundamentally destabilize U.S. Pacific dominance, you are just another talking head giving an opinion. The audience's defense mechanisms go straight up.
Right, because no one likes being told what to think right out of the gate.
Exactly. But if you follow the structure, hooking them, grounding them in undeniable geography, explaining the hidden logistical systems by the time you deploy your signature take, it doesn't feel like an opinion at all.
It feels like the truth.
It feels like the inevitable mathematical conclusion of all the objective facts that preceded it. It completely bypasses the viewer's skepticism.
That is incredibly potent. The audience thinks they arrived at the conclusion themselves.
Yeah. And then step 6 is the authority-style strategic conclusion, which just seals the deal. They don't end with a typical YouTube, like, smash that like button and subscribe, please.
No, that would ruin the vibe.
Right. They end with a lingering high-level assessment of the global stakes. It leaves the viewer feeling like they just walked out of a classified briefing room.
I mean, pulling back, this structure isn't just a formula for making military videos. It's moving from capturing attention to grounding people in facts and earning the right to your take.
Absolutely. It builds an incredibly loyal audience because you aren't just feeding them information. You are training them on how to process complex global events. You are literally giving them a lens through which to view the world.
Which brings us to the core realization of this entire deep dive today. Looking at this Ambat Media Group directive, it really shows us that true authority in the modern information landscape isn't derived from just throwing raw facts and technical specs at an audience.
Oh, isn't the spreadsheet?
Right. True authority is manufactured through story, through highlighting consequence, and through the deliberate revelation of the hidden systems that shape our world.
Yeah, it requires a profound understanding of two completely different fields.
Yeah.
The dense reality of the subject matter, sure, but also the cognitive vulnerabilities of the human brain consuming it. You have to understand the geography of the South China Sea just as well as you understand the dopamine loop of the curiosity gap.
So as a consumer of information, knowing that this playbook exists is a massive advantage. You can start spotting the strategic hooks, the deliberate transitions from objective to subjective, and of course, the color-coded anxiety in the media you consume every day.
It strips away the magic trick.
It really does, which leaves us with a rather profound question to consider on your own. If media companies have so perfectly mastered the psychological packaging of geopolitical conflict, if they can turn war and strategy and unpredictable global tension into perfectly structured, color-coded, curiosity-driven content.
How might this very packaging be subtly altering our perception of global threats?
Exactly. Are we truly understanding the muddy, complex realities of world peace and conflict, or are we simply consuming a beautifully produced, highly engineered strategic narrative?
Just feeding our brains desire for a closed loop.
Something to think about the next time a perfectly designed, fire-dark thumbnail catches your eye.
Subscribe to Ambat Legal Insight and stay legally informed with clear, practical, and reliable breakdowns of the law. Follow our channel and activate the bell icon so you never miss important legal updates, case analyses, and expert insights that matter to every citizen. Support our mission of spreading legal awareness by liking, sharing, and commenting, because your one action can help thousands become more legally empowered. Join the ALI community today across YouTube, podcast, and social platforms and take a step toward understanding your rights, your laws, and your justice. Ambat Legal Insight, because law is for everyone.